Applause and a warm welcome from Shannon Holt.
Okay, so I have a friend who wrote a mystery novel. He asked me to suggest a title, so I read the manuscript carefully. And I said, how about the constipation of a certain famous English private investigator working the streets of 20th century London? My friend just looked at me. I said, too wordy? He said, no shit, Sherlock. I said, oh, that's good. That's good. You should go with that. I have an idea for Dan Brown's sequel to the Da Vinci Code. I call it the Easter Bunny Code. The premise is this. You know that Jesus was a rabbi, right? And you know that he was crucified on a cross. So here's a cross. You know what happens when you put a rabbi on a cross? You see it? The Easter Bunny Code. I asked this girl, where are you from? She said, Idaho. I said, okay, that's cool, but where are you from? Later that night, she asked me, are you going to respect me in the morning? I said, I don't know. Are you planning to do something impressive between now and then? She said, like what? So I gave her an exotic fruit. I told her to eat it. While she was eating it, I filmed her. You can watch it on YouTube. It's called Girl, masticating on my kumquat. I don't know why it's so popular. Future historians will look back at this generation. The only thing they're going to want to know is who was the first person to refer to his family jewels as his junk. That, they will say, was the beginning of the end. Earlier today I went to the mall and the sales girl, she asked me, would you like to save 15% on this purchase? Right then I knew there was a catch. I didn't know what it was, but I figured it would involve paperwork and personal information, fine print and hidden fees, not to mention my fucking time. So I said, no thank you. And usually that's good enough, isn't it? But every once in a while you run into a salesperson who's like, they take it personally when you say no. So she gives me this look akin to pity and says, do you mean that you don't want to save money? You don't care about money? That you'd like to frivolously throw away everything you've worked so hard for? I said, yes. She said, okay. So I left. And I kind of felt scummy, like I had been contaminated with some of this materialism that pervades our society. I figured what I need right now is a little soul searching. I don't know about you, but when I'm doing a little soul searching, the way I like to do it is to ask myself, if I were a little soul, where would I hide? My day got even weirder though. I was at a coffee shop and this girl walked up to me and she said, have you been saved? I said, no, not really. She said, would you like to give your heart to Jesus? Right then I knew that there was a catch. I figured this would involve me confessing what a total bastard I've been so far in my life, followed shortly by going to church and completely fucking up my weekends. So I said, no thank you. And usually that's good enough, isn't it? But every once in a while you run into one of these turbo born-again Christians that can't take no for an answer. So she looks at me with something akin to pity and she says, do you mean that you want to go to hell? That you want to spend the rest of eternity serving Satan as his own personal roasted marshmallow? I said, yes. And she said, okay. But you know, religion is such a personal thing. It's different for every individual. I know I feel closest to God when I'm watching a football game. My team is losing horribly, and I'm a New York Jets fan, so I do know what I'm talking about. I think this is God taking a moment of his time to teach me a little something about humility. And to show my appreciation, I take a little of my time to teach him about blasphemy. So with that in mind, let us proceed to my next couple of jokes. It's okay for you to listen to these, but you should consult your personal clergyman or spiritual advisor before you laugh. If you could go back into biblical times and be present for any miracle, which miracle would you most like to see with your own two eyes? I'm getting the feeling maybe a few of you would like to see Jesus turn water into wine. But if you were there and you saw Jesus turn water into wine just before you took a sip, wouldn't you be wondering in the back of your mind, is this the same magical water that he was walking on just a couple chapters ago? Because if it is, I don't think there's any fermentation in the world that can cure foot fungus. For me, I would most like to see the miracle referred to as the Immaculate Conception. Now, I realize that you don't actually see the Holy Spirit because he's invisible, but just the look on Mary's face as she is unexpectedly impregnated with the most important fetus of all time. I mean, how did it happen? Were they sitting around the dinner table and her dad looks at her and says, "Mary, are you okay?" And her mom looks at her and says, "I know my falafels are good, but they're not that good." And her dad says, "Mary, what is it?" And for the only time in history, a woman said, "Oh God," with no exaggeration whatsoever. Thank you. Have a good night.